Episode 6 of No One Asked Us, the show where Craig and I banter on for far too long about Lord knows what. And we got a lot going on today, a lot on the docket. He's Craig Choate, I'm Logan Lee. This is episode 6. As I said, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, comment, all sorts of good things like that before we get started. Craig, it's been a while since we talked. We're recording this on Tuesday night as the last of the Elite 8 games are going on. How's your week been, man? You've had a busy week. Talk about it. What's going on in your life?
Yeah, I've got one shot of the vaccine. That's the big news.
Kudos.
I got my first dose of the vaccine. So it was an ordeal trying to get it. I don't want to get too much into it, but it took a few extra days for me to get the dose, as a few days longer than I had anticipated. But other than that, just kind of chugging along. We keep delaying these recordings one day because of this NCAA tournament schedule. We'll get back on our weekly routine, but it is weird going 8 days between recording, and then we'll probably do one Sunday or Monday next week and try and get back to normal.
Eventually we will be on more of a normal schedule, but you brought up the schedule to the tournament, and that's something that we have a lot to talk about today. So I don't really want to dive into that too hard right now.
Agree.
But at one point I thought I liked this schedule, how they set it up this year. But I'm not sure that I do. I have a lot of issues with some of this stuff. I thought, again, I don't want to dwell on this for too long, but you made the comment on Twitter about the time that they're starting these games, which I do think is a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I understand from a West Coast standpoint. Obviously, a lot of these teams are from the West Coast. But the other thing, too, is why are we playing these Elite 8 games at the same time as the women's? Why are they at the same time? Why are we being forced to watch that epic UConn Baylor finish on the women's side last night, or the Elite 8 games on the men's side? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. That should have been figured out from the beginning. I mean, obviously these tournaments always go on at the same time, but there's always been, the women's have always had the Monday, Tuesday slots. So it's worked out better, but that just blows my mind that we're doing this. Like, you're forcing people to watch one or the other. Like, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah. I thought of that the first week of the tournament when the men played, did they go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, the women will go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then they did, but then now they're playing on the same nights. And I agree. It doesn't make any sense. I have watched more UConn per se than most. I watched the UConn Iowa game and then the UConn Baylor game, but the women's tournament's been just as entertaining. There's some talented teams there. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, the scheduling this year, and specifically the timing. That's my biggest issue. You got an Elite 8 game just tipping off at 9:00 Central Time, 10:00 on the East.
Right. And the thing that I don't understand, and I mentioned this on Twitter yesterday, it's not so much the time that it starts, but they're using these two courts for a reason.
Yeah.
Like, the reason was that you could start the second game immediately following the first game.
Yeah.
So we're literally doing 30 minutes so that they can throw in extra commercials, which is obviously what this is.
Yep.
I mean, it's so that CBS and Turner can have 30 more minutes of commercials to run. I get that part, but from an East Coast standpoint, it's 10:00 and we're just now starting this game. I'm going to be super tired again tonight. I can tell already.
Yeah.
And
same.
But whatever, here we are. As I said earlier, we are recording this Tuesday night. Michigan and UCLA had literally just tipped off. So we won't know the end of this game by the time we log off tonight. But we do know the other three teams that are playing in the Final Four. Baylor and Houston on one side, and Gonzaga on the other. Barring a UCLA upset, which I think is certainly on the table here. I don't want to speak too far. But as I said last week, as shocking as a lot of things have been, it's pretty chalky so far in the Final Four. Does that surprise you at all?
No, it doesn't. I don't know if I said it on the show or I just heard it and thought it. I think it was Jay Billis that said that he expected there to be a lot of chaos early.
Yeah.
First, second round, but then he expected the cream to rise to the top. I've said it all year. I think that it was a very top-heavy year.
It was.
Gonzaga was head and shoulders the best team all season. Even if they don't win the championship, I think they're the best college basketball team. And I just said it tonight. They might be the best college basketball team I've ever seen.
I think it's certainly possible.
Yeah. And then you had Baylor and Michigan right there below them. And then you had a drop off between each level, which I think was what we're seeing play out. Gonzaga, Baylor, man, I hope we get that, because that could be a good game. Yeah. But Gonzaga could also win by 20. No, we'll just wait and see. But kind of how I foresee it shaking out.
Yeah, no, I agree. We'll kind of go through quickly the Elite Eight matchups as they've already been played, but kind of recap them a little bit. We mentioned Baylor getting past Arkansas there in the South region. Arkansas, I thought, might have had a chance to play with them, but Baylor kind of pulled away on that one. And then, earlier in the Sweet 16, I had mentioned it last week, and I think both of us did. Loyola was the shocker. I mean, the way they played so well against Illinois, and then to just look awful in at least the first half against Oregon State. The second half was a little bit different story. But I was surprised by that. That was not the same team at all. And I get that that's how this works. That's not the same Illinois team that we saw most of the season either. So you have one bad game and obviously you're done. But I really thought that they had a good chance to run through that region. But they laid an egg and got taken down by Oregon State, who then ultimately lost to Houston. Did you watch much of those games? What are your thoughts on Loyola?
I've watched pretty much every game. I said I wasn't going to after Illinois lost, but I haven't turned it off. It's basketball. I like basketball, whatever. Loyola surprised me. I thought they would go to the Final Four out of that region, even beating Houston, although I thought Syracuse would beat Houston. So I just had that region all messed up from the get-go. But it just goes to show that you have one good day, you can beat anybody. Right. And I don't think Loyola is as good of a team as they played against Illinois, but I don't think they're as bad of a team as they played against Oregon State. It's just how basketball goes, especially in the NCAA tournament. And I think Oregon State was playing really, really well. And so that played a factor in the Loyola win for Oregon State, loss for Loyola. But it stings a little bit more for Illinois after seeing Loyola play how they did this week.
Yeah. I wasn't able to watch most of the first part of that game. I was listening to it on the radio, and just listening to how awful the game was in general. It wasn't just Loyola.
Yeah.
Oregon State wasn't exactly lighting it up either.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of frustrated. Like I obviously, as you said, I would have felt a little better had that gone a different direction. But either way, that is now past us. So as we mentioned, Baylor and Houston on one side, Gonzaga, and then the winner of this Michigan UCLA game on the other. You think we're still looking at Gonzaga going all the way, being undefeated?
Yeah.
Do you think Baylor stops them? Do you think Michigan or UCLA stop them? Do you think there's a chance?
I mean, there's always a chance. But I think the Baylor game just ended. I don't know how much you watched. I watched pretty much all of it. They don't do anything wrong. I think they had one turnover in the first half. They did have early in the second half, they had a little slump there, where USC kind of made it somewhat of a game. It was still 15, 12 points. But they just have so many weapons. Drew Timme, Jalen Suggs, Corey Kispert. I mean, they have 9 guys. They go 9-10 deep. I don't see Gonzaga losing. And they said it during the broadcast. They've only had one single digit game this season. They're undefeated, so they've won every game. Yeah. And they've won every game except for one by double digits, and that was West Virginia. That was the same night. That was before Illinois Baylor in Indianapolis. Yeah. It's incredible.
No, I didn't really foresee Gonzaga having many issues through this tournament. I thought USC might have been an interesting matchup for them, just because if you can shut down Timme, you might have a shot. And USC has a couple of good post players. One of them is one of the best players in the country and probably going to be a top 3 draft pick. But his brother's pretty good too. So I thought that might have been his shot. But as you mentioned, they just have too much talent around him. It's not just him. I mean, obviously Suggs and everybody else there. So I'm with you there. I think Gonzaga is probably going to run the table on this season. That's a tremendous feat for anybody. I'm certainly not going to take away anything to do with the conference they play in or the year that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think that if they played in a different conference, they would go undefeated? No, probably not. But they would still be the best darn team in the country. And there's absolutely nothing to take away from that. Would they have lost a game in the Pac-12 this season? Maybe, but that's not the point. I mean, they're still going to do it, and it is what it is. And maybe we're proven wrong. Maybe somebody takes them down, but I don't really foresee that happening at this point.
If I could change one thing about college basketball, it would be Gonzaga and the West Coast Conference. Like, we got to figure out a way to get them out of that, but there isn't, because they don't have football. So until something changes, they're just going to go 30-1 or 35-0 or something.
I was listening to Andy Katz was on Dan Patrick's show. I think it was today. I was listening to it later on, and he brought up, they're talking about Gonzaga, and he said, Andy Katz said he doesn't like the term mid-major in general, but he also says that there's nothing mid-major about Gonzaga, about their program, about their the funding, about Mark Few, about, like, there's nothing mid-major about it. He didn't say this, but I'm thinking in the back of my mind, except for the conference that they play in.
Yes.
That's about as mid-major as you can get. Again, I'm not taking anything away from them. They're still the best team in the country. The only thing I think might have changed is they might not have gone undefeated, but regardless, it is what it is. So that's where we're at. We're just about 5 minutes into this game, so a lot to be played. So we won't even know who the final four team is. But that's where we're at right now. So we're going to transition a little bit into some of the big coaching carousel moves this week around college basketball. A couple big ones, both here regionally, were interesting. First off, we'll start with Indiana. I was a little shocked. I mean, I've had a few days to think about this with the Mike Woodson hire. I'm not as confused by that hire as I am maybe the Thad Matta thing. I don't totally know what's going on there. They're bringing Thad Matta on to be some sort of associate or assistant AD, some sort of to oversee that program. I don't know really how that's going to factor into Mike Woodson, who is, has a long history of being a, assistant coach and a head coach in the NBA, was an IU grad, IU guy, played for Bobby Knight. So there's obviously the connections there when they figured out they weren't going to get Brad Stevens and they weren't going to get Chris Holtman. It made it easy for them to jump to that move. But when I saw that come across the wire, I was a little caught off guard. What do you think about Mike Woodson? What do you know about Mike Woodson? Because I'll be honest, I don't know a lot. I mean, I know who he is and I know that he's an NBA guy. I honestly didn't even know that he went to Indiana. I had no idea, but that's kind of where I'm at. How about you?
Same. I knew who he was. For some reason, I guess I thought he coached a LeBron team, but it doesn't look like that's the case. But yeah, I did not know he went to Indiana. So that changes it a little bit for me because they got one of their guys. My first initial reaction was Indiana thought they had Brad Stevens. Chris Beard was thrown out there. Chris Holtman was thrown out there, and they end up with Mike Woodson, who has never coached a minute of college basketball. So that was my first thought. I even tweeted it out there when it happened. I was actually on the road driving when it came through, so I didn't see it till a couple hours later. But the more I think about it, I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's as bad as initial reaction was. So if I could retract my tweet, I mean, he's one of their own, so he knows how Indiana works. And he's coached the best. I know the NBA coach in college doesn't always work, but I think there is a certain aspects that if you make the transition right, that it could work. So I don't hate it. It's obviously not the name that people thought or wanted, just because he has no college coaching experience.
Right.
I thought Chris Beard was the guy, honestly, because he had Bob Knight ties from Texas Tech. I thought he was going to be the guy, but it's not as bad as it looked on surface Sunday, I think, when the news broke.
So much of the college game is not only about who the head coach is, but it's about the coaches that coach brings in to work under him. If Mike Woodson can bring in a staff that is familiar with the college game and understands how the recruiting aspect works, and understands how the transfer portal works and all that stuff. And now maybe that's what the role Thad Matta is going to play in this. Again, I don't really know. That's not really been established. So who knows? But I'm not at first. I didn't necessarily hate the hire. Obviously, I'm not an Indiana person, Indiana fan. I didn't hate the hire. I was just very confused, I guess, at first. I was just caught off guard, as I said. So, but yeah, in hindsight, looking back on it, I don't think it's as strange or as bad of a hire as I might have initially thought. But we'll see. There's obviously a lot to come from that. The other big coaching move of the week was Shaka Smart, who just won they win the Big East the Big 12 tournament.
I believe so.
Which was, I thought it was interesting because it was the first time Texas had ever won the tournament, I think, which I was kind of surprised by. But then I thought about it. Well, the Big 12 hasn't technically been around as long, and Kansas has dominated that conference. So after I thought about it, I'm like, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had just won the tournament, the Big 12 tournament, and had a pretty good season. And he decided to head to Marquette. Thoughts on Shaka? I was a little shocked. Not to pun that too much, but I don't know. It was a little weird, but I can kind of get it, I think.
Yeah, another one of those that initial reaction is different than looking at it a few days removed from it. I was surprised just because I think Texas, when you think of the major revenue sports, you think Texas is one of the destination jobs that you're not going to leave because it's Texas, and especially football. I know they've had the run of bad luck since Mac Brown left, and especially with basketball. But then I don't know if you heard what he said, and I think this is true. I don't remember where I saw it. I hope it wasn't like an Onion article or something, but I don't even want to say it because it might be. I think what happened is the expectations were too high.
I think that's true.
And I think people wanted more out of him than what he was giving. And so he said, all right, I'm going to take this job because there's less pressure, honestly. I think people in Texas have their expectations for everything are so high that unless he's going to Final Fours and winning national championships, he would have eventually been fired. So he got back to somewhere that there's less pressure.
I don't think Shaka really wanted to play in the crowd that Texas was gonna have to play in. I don't think he wanted to play in the one and done system. I don't think he wanted to, be going after the top dog recruits. I don't think that's who he is. I don't think that's I think his success as a coach prior to going to Texas was based off of, a different style of basketball, a different style of player, and taking a Texas job, a job like Texas is a huge move. Obviously he made tons of money to do it, but in reality, he's probably better suited for Marquette.
Yeah.
I mean, he probably is. It's, it's Big East basketball. It's going to be, a different style of player that he's going to be going after. So I think it's probably a good move for him. Probably got out before they forced him out. Probably one of those type of situations, but
I thought the same thing.
So, so those were the two big moves. I know there was other coaching carousel and transfer portal stuff throughout the week, but we won't dive into too much of that. We got a lot of other stuff to talk about. But that's where that's where we were with that. Before we switch over to other sports, we're going to dive into the NBA a little bit. Big move for the Bulls. I know you've been hopping on the Bulls bandwagon here recently. What do you think about the move to go get Nikola Vucevic?
Yeah.
He's a good player, man.
He's a good player.
Is.
He is.
Him and Levine, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
It makes a lot of sense.
Initially, my thought was, what's the point? Because I don't think the Bulls are competing for much
Right. That was my thought too.
So I was like, all right, why are you buyers here? Why aren't you selling to get more draft picks? But as I saw other reaction and it made a lot of sense, I was like, okay, yeah, okay, I like it. Disclaimer, I have been watching more Bulls this year. Once they fired and got rid of Garpax and brought in Billy Donovan and Karnisovas and all the guys, I like what they're doing in Chicago. So I am paying attention a lot more. And I mean, anytime you can get an all-star, I mean, you're not going to not do it. So,
right.
And they didn't give up hardly anything. I guess
No.
some first round picks, I think maybe.
Yeah.
But Wendell Carter wasn't really doing much, and Otto Porter was a terrible contract, so you got rid of that. And so I like the move for the Bulls. They do still need a lot more than they've got now. They need a lot more pieces, but they've got a good nucleus, a good coach, and a good front office, which is progress.
Yeah, that's something that I know that there might be another team or two in Chicago that their fan base feels a little differently about that. One in particular. I'm not talking about the Cubs yet. I'm talking about the other one.
That's called a tease.
Talk about the Bears first off.
Okay.
But the Cubs are coming up. Don't you worry. I got thoughts. No, I admittedly, I don't follow the NBA a ton. I follow enough. I know what's going on. But when I saw it, my first reaction was to go to the standings to see where the hell the Bulls were.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't think the Bulls are like really contending for anything. Why would you go after this type of player? Mm-hmm. Just like you said. And that's the first thing I did is I went to my phone, I went to wherever, and I looked up the standing. I'm like, they're not even in 8th place.
Well, the playoffs are different
close.
This year.
Well, yes. Yeah. But they're still obviously in the mix, and a player like that can certainly help them. So, I mean, it's the NBA is really, everybody versus the Nets and the Lakers, but
yeah, true.
Whatever. I think it's a good move for the Bulls. I think he'll be a welcome addition to play with Levine. They got a good nucleus there. They can definitely make some noise in the East, and who knows, another year or two, and they could be back towards the top of the basketball world. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
It just kind of shows that the front office at least knows what they're doing and has a vision.
It's nice.
Yeah, it has the front office has a vision, and they know what they want, which is different than the last decade,
right?
I guess.
Not like signing Andy Dalton to be QB1. Okay, I'm not.
We'll talk about that. That's coming.
I got nothing to say on the Bears. We're gonna skip the Bears though briefly here before we get to baseball. We got plenty of baseball talk. We'll do that here in the next half of the show. Spring football is here. I know you've been following a little bit, probably more than I have. The big news, probably at least in my neck of the woods, is the Caleb Griffin stuff. Switching, or at least partially switching to be a receiver, which is awesome. He's a great kid for one, but just I know what type of athlete he is. Just in high school, he played everything. So I know he can be more than just a kicker. I mean, it's strange to me that, your third year in college, after never playing the position ever before, that you just become a receiver, but he can certainly do it. I mean, that's whatever. We'll just see how that goes. But, what else is going on in the world of spring football that you need to update the world on? Do you have any thoughts on the Bielema situation?
Nothing really. I like the direction he is taking things. I think he's checked pretty much all of the boxes since being hired. He's making Illinois a priority, and it's. I don't think it was a bad thing that Lovey kind of did his NFL thing. Like, he kind of brought the NFL to college. It changed it up a little bit and sparked some interest. But I think Bielema has got it back to a college football program, which I think is needed, and he's done a really good job with that. As far as Caleb, I'm sure you remember that game last year where 11 fielded the punt.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, wait, what? Has a kicker ever returned a punt? So we got a taste of it last year with Lovey. But like you said, he's a great kid. I talked to him a ton at WCIA. He was a go-to interview for anything Danville. Great kid, athletic. I don't know if you've ever been to any practices or workouts for football, but kickers are kind of moseying around. They'll kick a little bit, and then they'll kind of find different places. And Brett Barons.
That's not him. It's not Caleb.
Yeah, no. Brett Barons at WCIA got some video of him and Trayvon Sidney in the corner of the end zone at the end of one training camp practice doing one-handed catches. And Caleb was holding his own against Trayvon Sidney. So not unexpected. And one last thing with Caleb, the dude loves Illinois. You know how many different sporting events that I would have to cover at WCI. We covered everything. And if you were going to an Illinois sporting event, you would see Caleb Griffin in the stands.
He was there.
He supports soccer. He supports volleyball. He supports baseball, softball. He supports it all. And
he was back at Danville. Anytime they had something big, that there wasn't a big Illinois thing going on, he was back at Danville High School. I mean, he's I've known Caleb for a while. It's just great to see him, being able to do that. That's just awesome to even think about. Just you go there as a kicker, and then your junior year, you decide all of a sudden, all right, I'm going to be a receiver. Yeah. I mean, we'll see what comes of it. But just the idea of it is really cool. And, I'm happy for the kid. That's really awesome.
Position of need too. Yeah. The wide receiver room is very thin. Now, do I expect him to go out and catch 100 balls for 1,000 yards? No. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see him lining up out there and maybe getting a couple catches this year. So I'm not putting anything past him. But we're just getting into spring football. We don't even know. We do have a spring game this year for Illinois, which is different and a breath of fresh air, which would be
What's the situation there with fans? Are people going to be able to go?
I haven't heard about fans yet. I know it's on Big Ten Network on the 19th, April 19th. So people will at least be able to watch it, but I have not heard about fans.
Well, good stuff. It's exciting. I haven't really, it's been more difficult for me to follow Illinois football. I just, with not being there, not being around it, not going to games, the team not being very good. Yeah. I've had other commitments on Saturdays in the fall, the last several years. So it just, it's been a little more difficult for me to follow. And I was really excited about the Levy stuff when it happened. Yep. And then, I still check in on some games every now and then, but I really don't sit down and watch a ton of Illinois football. Mm-hmm. But I'm really hoping that changes. I would really like to, be a little bit more passionate about it. And I really think that, Bielema is going to take them, in that direction and, get a lot of the fan base, people like myself that, might have fallen out of it and, bring him back to it, because I think that there's a lot there. I think the Big Ten is obviously a football powerhouse conference, but there's no reason why Illinois can't compete and be playing for bowl games. If we're still going to have a system where there's a bajillion bowl games, there's no reason that Illinois shouldn't be playing in one every year. There's really not. I'm not saying they need to be playing being in the mix for conference champion, but they should be able to play in a bowl game.
I think almost kind of like Northwestern.
Absolutely.
I think the Northwestern mold is something Illinois should shoot for. And I know it sucks saying Northwestern's ahead of us, but it's no doubt that they are. They've been to the Big Ten championship twice in the last 3 years, I think. So that's something that Illinois can shoot for because the West isn't very strong. The only other thing off top of my head that I'm looking for from football is Isaiah Williams. I know they're saying that there's a quarterback competition between Peters and Williams, but I've also heard some coaches in some press conferences mention Williams as a receiver. In the slot. So I don't think he's taking any reps there because I see a bunch of pictures and videos of him with the orange jersey, which is quarterback. But I would like to see that play out because I think he could make an impact as a slot guy, kind of what they did late in the year there. But another college football thing, I downloaded the college football NCAA 14 revamp this week, and it's spot on.
I would like to do that. The problem is that I don't have 14. I have 13. Oh. I don't know why. I never got 14. Yeah. So 13 is the one I have. So I don't think that's even available to me. So
yeah. Shout out Andy Olson at WCAA for the hookup there.
Hooked you up there? Yeah. Good deal. All right, we're going to switch to baseball. Opening day is just a couple days away now. By the time this airs, it'll be the following day. So Thursday is opening day around Major League Baseball. Finally, After the season, after everything that happened last year, obviously baseball did have a season. It was, a shortened season. A lot of things were different, but I was just kind of a little iffy on, where we were going to go with this season, but it is here. Spring training went off without a hitch for the most part. So we are here. Opening day is upon us. We'll kind of go through some, expectations for some of our teams, some of the local teams. And then we'll, kind of touch on some predictions. So we'll start with the Cardinals. Craig, you're the resident Cardinal fan, if I'm not mistaken. The Cardinals play in a division that I'm not sure. It's the only division of baseball that there's not a clear favorite. I think there's probably 3 or 4 teams that are competing. Everybody but the Pirates are competing. And we'll talk about the Cubs here in a little bit. But Cardinals had a good offseason, at least, better than most in the division with bringing in Nolan Arenado. So what do you see? What do you want to see? What do you think is going to happen with this Cardinal team this year?
Excitement is high, for sure. Just because, you acquired one of the best, argument that he is the best third baseman in baseball, a position that you haven't really had a good value player at in a long time. You've thrown Matt Carpenter out there and kind of just, it's been a rotating door for a little bit. So to get Arenado was a huge move for the franchise. But there are still a lot of question marks. Like you said, that probably puts them in the lead as the favorite to win the division, but it doesn't make them the clear-cut automatic. There's no way the Cardinals don't win this division because there are a lot of holes. Pitching is, I think the bullpen's pretty good, but the rotation already has some injury bugs. Miles Michaelis and KK Kim are going to start the year on the IL. You're relying on Carlos Martinez in the rotation, but you got Jack Flaherty and Adam Wainwright, which are a good anchor 1-2. So it looks like Daniel Ponce de Leon and maybe John Gant fill out the rotation, which I don't think you want as your 4-5 starters. And then the outfield concerns me a little bit. Harrison Bader is starting the year on the IL as well, who would have been the starting center fielder. So you're starting with Tyler O'Neill in left, Dylan Carlson in center, and then Justin Williams, Austin Dean, or John Nagowski in right/left, a corner outfield. So the outfield is a little scary. But the infield, I think, is spectacular. First to third, you got Goldschmidt, Tommy Edman, Paul DeYoung, and Arenado, and then of course Yachty behind the plate. So I think expectations are high, but need to get healthy. I think they will be. I don't think any of the injuries to the Cardinals are long term. I'm pretty sure they'll be back within the first month of the season, and just got to get lucky from there on out and keep doing your thing. I do think that Arenado's numbers probably fall a little bit just because he's not in cores. He's probably not a lock for 30 home runs and 100 RBIs. But just to have a professional hitter to protect Goldschmidt or to set the table for Goldschmidt, I think is going to be huge. I would like to see Arenado 3, Goldschmidt 4, but there might be times where Goldschmidt's 2 and Arenado's 3. They've kind of tinkered with it a little bit in spring training, but I'm most excited I've been for a baseball season in quite some time. It felt like the gap from the World Series to this week was longer, but it was actually shorter because the World Series was later in the year, but it felt like it took forever to get here, but I'm excited it is. What do you think of the Cardinals from a different fan base point of view?
Well, and as I said earlier, before I tossed it over to you, that division is a conundrum, I think. Yeah. The Cardinals were the only ones to do anything in the offseason that wasn't getting rid of players, bringing in Arenado. The Brewers did a little bit. Colton Wong was probably the biggest addition. I can't think of another one.
Jackie Bradley Jr.
Yep. Okay. JBJ.
They added them late too. They were
couple defensive pieces. Neither of those players are really gonna tear it up on the offensive side. So yeah, that division, we could talk about that all day. We're not going to get back into the offseason, but that division I do think is a conundrum. I'm not sure that, and we'll talk about predictions as we get a little later, but most of the divisions have a clear favorite or like a 1-2 race. I don't think the Central does. I think the Central is everybody but the Pirates right now. I think the Reds are even in the mix, even though they were kind of sellers too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think there's a lot to happen there. To answer your question, as an outsider on the Cardinals specifically, I do think they have, collectively, I do think collectively they probably have the best talent overall in the division. I think the Cubs might be up there with them. When you put it out on paper, does that necessarily translate into the most wins? I don't know. The Brewers are certainly right up there in that conversation. So the Cardinals are scary when they're healthy. That rotation has some weapons, as you talked about. On the offensive side, other than Goldschmidt and Arenado, the bats don't scare me a ton.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows what it'll be this year. It'll be the salsa again or whatever. There will be some sort of good luck magic, and Matt Carpenter will just do Matt Carpenter things. He probably won't even play in 40 games this year. But just from an outsider, I think that they're certainly one of the teams to beat in that division. No team might win 85 games in that division. We'll have to see. But I do think, especially from a 1-2 punch, maybe if Javi and KB are playing to their potential, there might be an argument for that too. But I don't see it happening. I think from an offensive standpoint, the 1-2 punch of Goldschmidt and Arenado is the best in the division. And I think Flaherty is probably the best starter in the division. So I think that's pretty well said. We'll just go to the Cubs as well while we're already in the division. You kind of talked about the Cardinals off season. The Cubs did even less than the Cardinals. Most notably, not bringing back Kyle Schwarber. They did replace him with Jock Peterson, which is a pretty fair swap. I don't think that it's drastic one way or the other. Jock Peterson had a great spring. We'll see what that translates into. I know he's excited about the opportunity to play every day. He didn't really get that opportunity in LA. So David Ross has told him, you're going to play every day until we realize that you can't. So, and so far in the spring, at least he's earned it. The rotation has some question marks. I think there's a lot of debate on Cubs Twitter today because there was a couple articles and things came out that Kyle Hendricks wasn't listed as an ace and all this stuff. Kyle Hendricks is an ace for the Cubs. He's not your prototypical ace. I think, as a Cubs fan, I would probably rather Kyle Hendricks be your 2 starter, but as it stands right now, that's not who he is. He's the best pitcher on the team. He's going to be your consistent arm. He's not going to throw 95 miles per hour. He's a command guy, and that's just who he is. So, from the rotation standpoint, Hendricks and bringing back Jake Arrieta, who is probably just going to be a shell of himself, but we'll just have to see how that translates. Adbert Alzolay sounds like he's going to get a shot there. Trevor Williams is there. So I don't know. I have some question marks about the Cubs rotation. The offense, the bats, if they come back, they're dangerous. Javi Baez had a bad season last year. But a lot of people have credited that to, and Javi himself has credited that to, he feeds off the fans. That's just who he is. He is a performer. He just feeds off that environment, and he just didn't have it. So, he's definitely prone to have a bounce back kind of season. I've already mentioned the word conundrum once this show, but Chris Bryant is a conundrum. I don't know what we're going to get out of him either. But I think if the two of them are at least 75% of the player that we know they can be, I think the Cubs are dangerous. I think they really are. They'll probably need to go get an arm at the deadline if that's the case, but I think they have enough. Wilson Contreras is still there. Anthony Rizzo is still there. Don't get me started on that. So I think there's plenty there. The only issue, the Cubs decided to send Nico Horner down to AAA to start the season, which I think was not necessarily a shock, but the fact that the Cubs didn't add a second baseman to speak of other than Eric Sogard, and they have a pitching rotations that is so heavily reliant on defense behind it. When you have guys like Hendricks, and it's just that's just how it's going to be. And Nico Horner is a great defensive player. His bat is not there yet. He's yet to play a season. He's yet to play any time in AAA. He went straight from AA to the majors when they needed him at the end of 2019 season. And then last year, since there was no minor league season, they just had him up. Played a really good second base, was a Gold Glove finalist. His bat wasn't there. So they're going to give his bat some time in AAA. David Bodie's going to start at second. So we'll see how that goes. But for the most part, the only question at this point is the backup catcher position, which it's supposed to be Austin Romine. He's hurt. If he doesn't start the season, unless they're able to sign somebody, then it's probably going to be PJ Higgins, who nobody is going to know. I don't know that he's going to bring a lot to the table, but we'll have to see how that goes. So I think the Cubs have the potential to be there. Will it happen in the end? I don't know. I think that's the biggest question mark for me. So I will give you the same question you gave me. As an outsider, how do you see the Cubs faring this year? What are your thoughts on their offseason and how they stack up for 2021?
The offseason was confusing. As any Cubs fan would tell you, it's just as confusing from an outsider perspective. But I mean, I don't want to say I don't understand the bearish view, because they do have probably the best lineup in the division. The bats are the best. They have 3 MVP caliber players in the infield with Rizzo, Javi, and Bryant. I mean, their 8 hitters might be the 8 best in the division. So I see it. So I don't understand why their win total is at 78.5. I don't see it. I feel like that's an 85 win team.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting more than everyone else is from the Cubs, but I think that's kind of the Cardinal fan in me the last 5, 6, 7 years, is that the Cubs are good. They're going to be better than they were for the previous 50 years. They're a good franchise. Now I agree, you do need an arm. Your 5 starters Arrieta's probably not going to hold up.
I didn't mention Zach Davies. He's the one that they got in. He was the only major league player they got in the Yu Darvish deal. Zach Davies is a really good pitcher.
Yeah.
But again, he's similar to Kyle Hendricks. I would love for Zach Davies to be the 3-man in this rotation. Yeah. I just wish they had somebody else that could help carry the charge.
I mean, someone like Yu Darvish, right?
Yeah, well, that would have been nice. That would have been nice.
Confusing, but I think they're going to be right there in September to win the division. It's going to be a 3 or 4 team race, like you said.
Yeah. So that's kind of the NL Central. We'll go to projections here in a bit, but let's jump over to the AL side. Talk about the White Sox a little bit. I think the White Sox have the makings to be a really good team this year. Now they did just take a big hit. Losing Eloy Jimenez for probably the whole season, or close to it. Unfortunate injury to a player that, quite honestly, is probably more suited to be a DH.
Yes.
But the White Sox don't really have that luxury to use him in that position. They have too many other bats that need to play other things, and it's just how their lineup works. Eloy Jimenez needed to be their left fielder. So that's a big issue for them. They're going to bring up Andrew Vaughn to start the season. It sounds like he's going to get a shot in left field. He was their first round draft pick a couple years ago, first baseman. Really good college bat who I think will translate well at that level. Can he be a left fielder? Who the heck knows? I don't think they really know. I think they're going to give him a couple shots. You know, they gave him a little bit of shot in spring training. They're going to see how it goes to start the season. They have enough offense there to be dangerous in that division. The Jimenez thing obviously is going to be a big blow. But as I said, I think there's a lot there that they can definitely have some success.
Of the 3 local teams for us, I think it's obvious the White Sox are the best of the three.
I would
on
I would
paper.
say so. I would say
Um,
so.
I mean, you have a bona fide ace in Lucas Giolito, Lance Lynn, and Dallas Keuchel are quality arms, so the rotation's already better than Cardinals and Cubs. One of the best closers in the league. Liam Hendricks was a good sign, or was that a trade? Whatever, acquisition.
Yeah.
And like the Cubs, their lineup is potent. Grandal, Abreu, Nick Madrigal, he's okay. Moncada, Tim Anderson has proved to be one of the best hitters in baseball the last couple of years. Robert is going to be a superstar. So it's all there for them. The big head scratcher and thing that might hold them back is they hired Tony La Russa to be the manager.
Yeah, I
what
don't get
in
that.
the world?
I don't get that, man.
I don't think it's going to work.
It made no
I
sense
really
to me.
don't.
La Russa is not the guy for that job. That is a young, exciting, fun team.
Exactly.
And La Russa is
He's
great
76.
manager.
He's 76,
in his
by the
time.
way.
He is not young, exciting, or fun. He's just none of those things.
He's the total opposite. He is the most old school manager you could probably find.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I might take that
sense.
back, because he used to bat the pitcher eighth all the time, and then that kind of became the norm. So maybe he was a little ahead of his game there. But I just, and again, I don't remember who were the candidates for that job or who they were wanting to bring in, but La Russa just made no sense to me whatsoever. So that's the one thing that might hold them back, and injuries, of course, because Eloy, like you said, probably out for the year. So you can't have any more of those if you want to compete.
I know you kind of dug into some of the odds for this coming season. You want to touch on that a little bit? Your thoughts on some of those and where we think some of these win totals are and things like that?
Yeah, just for the NL Central, since that's really the one we care about, the odds have the Cardinals as the favorite at plus 105 money, Milwaukee in second at plus 300, Cincinnati at plus 330, and then Chicago at plus 425. So they got Chicago finishing fourth, which, I mean, that seems like a good bet to me.
Yeah.
So World Series wise, Dodgers are the favorite at plus 350. And then, like we said, White Sox probably the best team of our local teams at plus 850. Cardinals at plus 2,200 and Cubs at plus 4,000. So a couple long shots. Well, I don't know I think the Cardinals are like seventh or eighth.
Would you say there's any
odds.
chance that the World Series champion is from Middle America? From the Midwest, from a central division? Do you think the World Series champion comes from a central division?
I think the White Sox could. Yeah. I mean, I put money on them last year because I wanted to get ahead of the curve. That didn't work. I really think they could. I think they got the pieces, I think. Do I think they will? No. But I think the White Sox have the best chance. I don't think the Cubs or Cardinals or anyone else in either of the central divisions are going to be potent in the off season or playoffs.
Yeah. No, I agree. Let's give our predictions. You want to do that? I know you gave me a homework assignment before we started this to have my predictions ready. And as the great student that I was, I procrastinated it and put it down on paper right before class started. So don't tell my mom I said that, because whatever, I'm almost 30. Anyway, I'll let you start. Give me your thoughts. Give me your division winners, and then we'll talk about playoffs and World Series.
All right. AL East, I'm going with the Yankees. Central, the White Sox. West, the Astros. I guess I don't really like the AL West, but I'm going with the Astros. 2 wild card teams, right? I always forget.
Yes.
I'll go with the Blue Jays, and I'll go with Minnesota for the other wild card spot in the AL. NL, I got Atlanta winning. The East, Cardinals in the Central, reluctantly. Dodgers in the West, and then Mets and Padres wild card. You want to go?
We are almost exactly the same. I went out on a limb. I went out on a limb, a small limb, to take the Blue Jays over the Yankees for the division.
Okay.
A small limb. The bigger limb, I'm gonna take the Angels in the wild card.
I knew that's what you were gonna say.
You know what? The pitching's still not quite there.
No.
But I think if the offense is doing enough at the deadline, they can make something happen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that they're, destined for the future for World Series to come. I want to see Mike Trout win a World Series. I keep seeing all these things come up. Is he the greatest of all time? Is he the greatest of all time? I want to see the guy at least play in a World Series.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But that's the one thing that I did differently. Just real quick, Blue Jays, White Sox, Astros, and then the Yankees and the Angels, Braves, Cardinals, Dodgers, Mets, and Padres.
So we do have
we
the
had
exact same.
I thought about the Brewers over the Cardinals, but I
thought about the Cubs over the Cardinals.
I would love for it to be the Cubs. I'm not going to do that. I picked Illinois to do well, and that didn't work out for me. So I'm just going to not do it and hope for the best. I'm wearing my Big Ten championship t-shirt, by the way. Go Illini. Playoffs. You want to do a quick little prediction? What do you think who's going to play in the NLCS, the ALCS, and the World Series? What do you got, Craig? Let's hear it.
For my championship series, I have 2 division rivals facing off in each.
Oh, okay.
I've got the Blue Jays beating the Yankees.
Oh, all right.
And the Padres beating the Dodgers.
Padres over Dodgers.
Yes.
That's fun.
Yeah. Told you. I was going a little bit.
I like it.
A little bit. Because I did chalk for my bracket and it didn't work. So yeah, I'll go out there for this.
I will say this. I do think the 2 best teams in baseball are in the NL West.
Yeah, I think.
I think that's the case. The Yankees probably have an argument.
I think the Yankees are up there.
But I do think the 2 best teams are in the NL West. With that being said, unfortunately, the Dodgers. Well, could the Dodgers even play them? If the Dodgers are the best team in baseball, well, I don't know. I guess it just depends on how it all shakes out.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't play each other if the Dodgers were whatever. It doesn't matter.
I don't know.
I went Dodgers over Mets just because that's what I was thinking in my mind. But again, if the Padres are also really good, I'm not sure that the Dodgers will also have the best record. Whatever. I'm going Dodgers over Mets and Yankees over the Angels.
You're really on the Angels bandwagon.
I just want to be, man. I just want to will it to happen.
So these are our heart predictions. These aren't our head predictions.
No, not necessarily. That one is a little bit, yes.
Yeah.
But then I have the Dodgers over the Yankees in the World Series, which is about as chalk as you can get.
I got the Padres over the Blue Jays.
I love it.
So
I would love to see that World Series. I don't want to see the Dodgers and the Yankees.
No.
So I would love to see the Padres and the Blue Jays. That would just be absolutely electric.
Let's do it.
This is what the kids would say.
I know exactly.
Tatis and Guerrero. That would be just fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. Machado and Bichette, and there's a lot of young talent. And I know who our guest would be World Series week.
Who's that?
That were happening. A certain SIU Curtis Sheehan.
Okay, I can do that. We'll get Curtis Sheehan, and we'll get Darren Fletcher. Former Blue Jay.
There we go.
That'd be great. So there we go. There you have it. There's
it's on paper.
It's on paper. It's out there in the world now. So you can at us in a few months when all of our teams are absolutely trash. And we'll go from there. So we're kind of starting to run out of time.
We both are one more quick baseball thing. Let's do the over unders real quick.
Oh yeah, I've kind of skipped over that. Yes, go ahead.
Cubs over under wins 78.5.
Over.
Yep. Agreed.
Over.
Cardinals over under 86.5.
Under. I don't think the winner of that division hits 85. or maybe 85 is the winner of the division.
I think 85, 86 is the winner. So this is a tough
I think
one.
they're all going to be between. I think there's going to be 4 teams between like 80 and 85 or 86 wins.
Yeah.
I just think that's how it's going to shake out. So I'm going to take the under on the 86.5 for the Cardinals.
I'll take the under. So if they go over, I'll still be happy either way.
Okay, great.
And then White Sox 90.5.
Are the Twins going to be good this year?
The Twins always seem to be good.
Because that would be the biggest thing. They're probably, I was looking at a couple things. The most recent one I had pulled up was 538. They have their projections, and they have the Twins to win that division with 90 wins, and the White Sox to finish with 85. So for the White Sox, especially if they're not going to have Eloy, and I'm not saying that he's like the centerpiece of that offense. He's really like their probably 5th or 6th guy in the lineup, but I'm going to take the under. I think they're really good. And I do think they're going to be a playoff team this year. And I think they very likely could win the division. So if they do win the division, they probably will get the over. And I know I picked them to win the division, but I'm just not fully confident in that number. I'm going to take the under.
Just so we don't agree on everything, I'll take the over.
Good for you. Good for you.
For the show's sake.
Smart man. We got to stop agreeing on everything. That makes terrible television. Real quickly, we both are in fantasy baseball leagues. Did you want to talk about your team a little bit? Do you have any thoughts, expectations? Or do you want to just skip on and, let the world know that fantasy baseball is going to be a big part of this show as we get into the summer months?
I can run through a little bit, just like the nuts, like the core pieces that I got.
Sure.
So it's a
Let's
12.
Hear it.
It's a 12-team league. You get 5 keepers for as long as you want. There's no rules or restrictions on keepers. So I kept Nolan Arenado, Mike Trout, Lucas Giolito, Aaron Nola, and Blake Snell. I got 3 arms in there because I didn't have a draft pick until the 4th round. So I wanted to get some reliable arms. So I kept them. And then with my first picks that I had in the 4th, 5th, 6th. I took Carlos Correa with my first pick. And then surprise, Dylan Carlson.
He was on my radar.
Alec Boehm, first third baseman for the Phillies.
Yep.
Kyle Lewis, some other guys. I got Ian Anderson in the rotation, Gavin Lux, second baseman for the Dodgers. And then you might appreciate this. I don't know if you will or not because he's not a Cub anymore. I got Kyle Schwarber.
I love Kyle Schwarber.
With my 9th
The only
pick.
jersey I currently own is Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah. And then we drafted Saturday, and I did not know the news that one of my deep sleepers that I was really excited to draft was Dalton Varsho from the Diamondbacks. He's a catcher with outfield eligibility.
Yeah.
So I drafted him, and then I woke up the next day to see that he was sent down to the minors. So I was real happy that I got him. Real happy I got him, and then saw he was sent down.
He'll be there eventually.
Yeah.
He's a good player.
We also draft one minor league player, and I got Bobby Witt. So I'm really happy about that one.
That's a good choice.
Yeah.
Real quickly, I'm in an auction league, which is a lot different than just doing a normal draft. This year, every year, my strategy tends to change. 2 years ago, I was on vacation and unable to draft, and the computer did it, and the league hated me for it. And then I still got like 1st or 2nd in the league. I don't remember what I placed, but I went like really heavy early in this draft. So like the first half of my team is like pretty solid, but then the last half is like bottom of the barrel. Like I paid like $1 for each of these players. So most of my money early went to a couple Dodgers, Cody Bellinger and Walker Buehler. I think Walker Buehler's really good.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely a Cy Young candidate in the NL. Bellinger is really good as well. He needs to have a little bit of a bounce back. I don't think last year was quite what I would have wanted to see from him, but Whit Merrifield's there. Pretty happy I was able to snag him. There's a couple guys I really wanted to get that it ultimately just didn't have the money for. But I was able to snag Luis Castillo and Kyle Hendricks from my rotation. couple guys that I really like. We'll have to see if they turn out. Kyle Lewis, Clint Frazier. I wish they'd let Clint Frazier bring his hair back.
Clint Frazier was on my list.
My favorite thing in all of baseball.
Clint Frazier was on my list and got picked a couple rounds before I could get to him.
Yep. Gleyber Torres, Alex Bregman. I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but yeah. So the point of this is that we're going to talk a lot about fantasy baseball throughout the summer, especially since there will be no basketball, no football really to speak of. So we're going to do things to talk about. So that's going to be something to keep in mind as we get a little further. Okay. So before we leave baseball, I do have one other thing that I would like to chime in here on. I know you've been waiting for it. I have some issues with the Cubs front office right now.
Really?
I'm not going to try to dive into the dollars and cents of this stuff. Get your popcorn ready. I'm not going to do that. I understand that we're in the middle of a pandemic. There's a lot of other issues that are going on here. Money was the biggest reason as to why they traded Yu Darvish. It was. Cubs.
Let it out, Logan. Let it out.
I'm not mad that they aren't extending these guys. The whole KB situation, I've already talked about him. He's a conundrum. I'm not sure where we're going to go with that. He's also a Scott Boras client, whatever. Javi Baez, that's another thing for a different day. The issue this week was Anthony Rizzo. Anthony Rizzo, as a baseball player, from a talent standpoint, is probably the lesser of those three players in terms of potential talent. But Anthony Rizzo is the face of this team. He's the unofficial captain of the Chicago Cubs. He has been for the last few years. He is the clubhouse personality. He's the face. He's the vocal guy. He's the leader. And for this stuff about this contract negotiations to leak like it did, and to see the numbers and how they stack up is absolutely mind-blowing to me that they can do this. Now, I just want to touch on this real quick. I'm going to bring up these numbers. This is the story that was posted up on The Athletic by Ken Rosenthal and Patrick Mooney. Patrick's the Cubs beat guy for the Athletic. According to them, the Cubs offered Rizzo a 5-year extension for $70 million. Okay. $70 million. Now, where Rizzo is coming from, and I understand this to an extent, Rizzo would like for his extension to be somewhat comparable to Paul Goldschmidt. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Anthony Rizzo is at the same level as Paul Goldschmidt. He's not. Paul Goldschmidt is one of the two best first basemen probably in all of baseball. Anthony Rizzo is not quite to that level. But when you compare these numbers, the extension that Goldschmidt got with the Cardinals was a 5-year, $130 million extension. What the Cubs offered to Rizzo was half of that. Are you really going to try to tell me that Anthony Rizzo is worth half of what Paul Goldschmidt is? No, at all. It makes zero sense to me. Now, if you want to lowball and try to come up, whatever. Again, I'm not going to try to get into the dollars and cents and the negotiation tactics and all that stuff. That's not for me to debate. But for that to be the number, again, I'm not saying that he's at the same level as Paul Goldschmidt, but to offer him half is asinine to me. Like he's not half the player Paul Goldschmidt is. It just blows my mind. And then there was another quote that came out from Rizzo during this whole thing that I made a note of it, and I want to read it here because quite honestly, Craig, it made me sad. It just made me sad. The quote from Anthony Rizzo said, quote, "It's not something I really think of right now. The only thing that really pops in my mind is one of my biggest mentors and best friends is John Lester. who has legacies at two different historic franchises. I love John Lester. I loved John Lester as a Red Sox, and then he came to the Cubs and helped win the Cubs a World Series. So I love John Lester even more. I know that baseball players move around. They don't, not very seldom anymore do they really stay in one place their whole career. But if Anthony Rizzo, who is, as I said, has been the face of this team, a World Series champion, he's not an MVP candidate, but you can put him in the conversation some years. But if the reason that he leaves is because the Cubs can't cough up enough money to at least make a reasonable pitch to him, that's a problem. That's a serious, serious problem. And this is just Rizzo. He's the cheaper of the three. Javi Baez and Chris Bryant are going to need and demand more money. Whether or not they deserve it, we'll have to see how this season goes. But they're going to want and demand more money than what Anthony Rizzo is. We're talking 5 years, $70 million, when he just wants something closer to what Goldschmidt did. Let me ask you this. Am I crazy? Is this just the crazy Cub fan in me? Or am I making sense to you as a Cardinal fan who has Paul Goldschmidt on that roster? Does it make sense? Am I nuts?
No.
Thank you.
I think the difficulty, and I don't think you see this a lot with any sports franchise really, is what you said. You've got Javi, KB, Rizzo,
right,
and I believe Contreras,
yes.
all four on expiring contracts this year.
Correct. Yeah.
So the Cubs are in a tough spot because you're
right.
not going to get all four of them for the money that they're asking.
No. And that has been common knowledge. That's part of the reason why Kyle Schwarber's not there anymore. I mean, that's been on the table for a while, and we've known that. So yes, that is obviously a big part of this. At some point, I just think they're going to have to figure it out. I don't want to see them just ship out everybody and have to start over. Mm-hmm. Like this team after the 2016 World Series, this team was thought to be a dynasty. Yeah. Like they had a young core of players. They should have been set for years to come. And it just got progressively worse every single year. Yeah. Now I don't know what's going to happen from this year with this 2021 season. As we've talked about, they have the potential, I think, to be a playoff team. Will they get there? I don't know. But if they stay on the current track that they're on now, probably not. And yes, you're right. Those other expiring contracts are obviously a big part of this. I was just floored when I saw that number.
Yeah. And that's what
floored.
That's what sends the red flags is the number. Realistically, do you think you get two of those locked up?
I would like to.
And
I would like to see them lock up Javi and Rizzo.
Right.
Would
that's
be
what
my
I was
two.
say. That's what
I love Contreras. I would love to see them lock him up too. He would be a very close third. The only reason I'm not as heartbroken on that one is because Miguel Amaya is coming.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't predict the future. He's still young. He's never played higher than AA, I don't think.
Yeah.
So I can't really. And yeah, the Cubs have other shortstops and stuff too. So it's not like there's not other young players in the system. But if I had, and you've asked me this before, if I had to pick two,
yeah,
it would be Rizzo and Baez. And it's not because they're the best or whatever, but they're just the ones that mean the most to the franchise. I think Chris Bryant, a great player, and I think that he's already had an MVP season, and I think he can have more MVP caliber seasons. If they can find a way to pay all four of them, I would love that. That would be ecstatic. But if we're having to cut it at a certain point, I think Chris Bryant is number 4 for me on that list.
Yeah,
personally.
It sounds to me, and I think you'll agree, that the Rizzo situation would be like if the Cardinals were going through something with Yachty. 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Because Yachty is like 38 years old now, so he's not prime like Rizzo is. So if you go back to Yachty's year 31-year-old year. He's coming off 3 seasons in a row where he batted 300, hit 14, 22, and 12 home runs, and then you offer him that kind of deal, like people would be pissed. So that's my comparison. So I totally see where you're coming from as a Cubs fan.
No, and I think, the counter of this is, and they bring it up in that letter, that article on The Athletic, is DJ LeMahieu, who signed an extension for 6 years, $90 million.
Yeah.
I think that's where the Cubs are coming from. I think that's what their starting point is.
Yeah.
But I understand where Rizzo's coming from too. A comparable player, same position, same division. Rizzo is not quite to the Goldschmidt level.
Yeah.
But he's closer than where they're trying to say he is.
Yeah.
In terms of the money.
Yeah.
So that just, whatever. They're going to, these contract talks are going to stop, and we're going to have to wait, and who knows what's going to happen with this season. It's very possible that the Cubs aren't even in contention in June or July, and that they just start selling everybody. So I hope that doesn't happen. I hope they're definitely in the mix. I hope they obviously win the division. I hope they go on to win the World Series. I have to be realistic. But as we talked about earlier in the show, they, especially from the offensive side with the bats, they have the talent.
Yeah.
We'll have to just have to see. But anyway, thank you for allowing me to go on a soapbox. It doesn't happen often. You've taken the reins for most of these sessions of our show. But yeah, I had to get that off my chest, and it's been bugging me all week. That's the other problem. Part of this quarantine situation is I don't talk to people. So, sometimes I just need to vamp, and you and all the listeners out there are going to be on the receiving end of that. So thank you for that.
That's what the show is for.
That's why we're here.
That's why
Nobody
here.
asked us to do it, but we're here anyway. Damn it.
We could.
All right, I'm going to get away from sports now real quick.
Yeah, quickly.
I have a few things that I just wanted to touch on because, part of my world is the movies and TV shows and that stuff. I've been talking about it for a while. On other podcasts before talking about it, I've talked about it on Twitter. Disney and their whole movie release schedule, especially with the Marvel movies, continuing to get pushed back. They finally announced this week again that they're pushing back Black Widow, which is eventually when movie theaters open up. It's going to be whenever Black Widow comes out. But what Disney decided to do ultimately, which is what I figured they would do, is they're going to give it a simultaneous theatrical and Disney Plus premiere access release. So on July 9th, when Black Widow comes out, you can, at that point, I think everybody will be able to go to the theater. We're not going to be flocking to the theater, but you'll have the option to either go to the theater or pay $30 to watch it on Disney Plus, which in my opinion will probably be more successful than their other Prime premiere video on demand things, just because it's a Marvel property. So that's inevitably, I said that was inevitably going to happen, and it is happening. So do you think on July 9th, do you think you'll go to a theater to see Black Widow, or do you think you'll pay $30 to watch it at home, or do you think you'll wait until it's for free on your Disney Plus 6 months later? Because I know how you work. You're usually about 7 months behind, but will you be 7 months behind with a Marvel movie?
I don't know. Normally I'm not. Normally, with all the Avengers and Black Panther and Captain Marvel, I'm right there in theaters. We'll probably have to see where we're at as a society on that July 9th. I'll be fully vaccinated. So as long as but even though I will be, I don't know that I would want to sit right next to someone.
So you're right. I agree.
Yeah.
We'll
have to see. I don't think I would pay $30 to stream it though.
Well, that's the other thing here too. There's a couple different things here. And again, I know we're going a little long, but the two things here that I think are interesting to note is that I don't think on July 9th that we're going to be at full capacity.
Yeah.
Theaters are still going to be operating at 50% or whatever the number is.
Yeah.
So when like I have gone to the theater a few times the last couple months, and when I've gone, I've gone to see smaller movies. There might be 2 other people in the whole theater.
Yeah.
Black Widow, obviously going to be a different story, but I'm going to imagine that even on July 9th, when I go onto my app to pre-order my tickets, it's going to automatically block off at least a couple of seats next to me and probably in front of me.
Yep.
So you're not most likely. I don't see a scenario where we're going to be at full capacity. So even if you do go, it's going to be, you're not going to have to necessarily sit next to somebody. Now, the other thing too that I wanted to bring up here is you mentioned the $30 thing, which for me personally, I live in a town where for me to go to a movie, it ranges anywhere from like $6 to like $12.
Yeah.
I know in Champaign, it's probably a little higher, or at least, more like the 10 to 12-ish range, probably most of the time. But I know in bigger cities, in bigger metropolitan areas, it's not as crazy to pay $30 to watch a movie at home.
Right.
Because you're probably going to pay that anyway.
Right.
2 people go to a movie, it's automatically $30.
Yeah.
So the whole $30 thing with Disney, to rent any movie, it's $20. So whatever. It is what it is. So that's what's happening with that. And then there are other movies that are going to be released after that. Eventually, I think we're going to get like 4 Marvel movies in the span of like 6 months or something. It's going to be nuts. Plus all the TV shows that they're going to be cutting out too. So, then the last thing, and I mentioned it last week, we kind of touched on it briefly. Craig, I actually did watch the Snyder cut of the Justice League.
4 hours worth, 6 hours worth for you.
Well, yes, because I watched the original 2 hours. I watched that earlier in the week. I wanted to do it all at once, but I just couldn't get 6 hours in a row to do that. But I did watch both. Is it worth the 4 hours? Is my question that I ask myself every day.
Don't ask
was
me.
Was it worth the 4 hours? I'm asking myself. I know you haven't watched it. You probably won't. I'm going to go with no. I don't think it was necessarily worth the 4 hours, because a lot of it was just like, there was extra scenes. There were different things that were added to it. But a lot of it was just like slow scenes, like slow action sequences, just like that easily added 20 minutes to this movie, at least. But it was better than the original. It was. The Josh Whedon version that came out in 2017 was just not as, it just wasn't good. It had a lot of issues. And I'm not saying that this Zack Snyder's version of the movie was a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination, but it was better. So that's that. I've kind of rambled on for too long now.
The Act 3 Logan Lee show.
We got to have another name for that. Eventually I'll have, better things to talk about. But right now, that's what's going on in the world. So I figured it was at least worth talking about. Craig, before we log off tonight, do you have anything else that you want to toss out into the wind and see what happens?
I'm good. Ready to watch some baseball. It's my favorite time of year because you're likely to find a day game at some point, somewhere, every day of the week. And then every night there's a game. So I'm excited for that. I'm actually kind of excited for the Final Four, even though Illinois is not in it. But it's a good time of year. NFL news, we get another NFL game this year. 17.
Yeah, that did happen. That came across the wire late today. That's always exciting. But yeah, anyway, so we're going to wrap up episode 6 here of No One Asked Us. As of right now, just to throw it out there, it's a really close game. UCLA and Michigan. It's like a 2-point game right now. It was like 9 points at half. And Michigan currently trails by a couple of points with 9 minutes left in the game. So one of those 2 teams will play in the Final Four. What'd you say?
Let's just get us each another square, and then we'll.
I would love another square. I've done pretty well already. But yeah, so we'll talk Final Four national championship game next week. We'll probably record Tuesday again. I don't know. We'll tweet it out for those of you that actually care. We'll get that information out to you. But we'll have baseball to talk about. We'll have something else to talk about, I'm sure. But yeah, so this has been No One Asked Us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, post, share. Text us or tweet us your thoughts. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Let you know what you want to hear. You can also email us. That will be on our page as well. So he's Craig Choate. I'm Logan Lee. This has been No One Asked Us. We'll be back next week for another round of who knows what. Peace.